Remarkable people overcoming remarkable challenges with resilience, dedication, community, and grit. Listen as they share their stories of overcoming adversity. Open your eyes to what is genuinely possible for all of us. Authentic Adversity with host Chris Howe.
Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of the Authentic Adversity podcast. I'm your host, Chris Howe. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of sitting down with a good friend of mine. He's an ex-pro fighter. He's a Muay Thai and Kickboxing coach. He's a public speaker, an educator. He's just an all-around good guy. The always inspirational Richie Hardcore.
You're too kind. Thank you.
No,
I
it's all
appreciate
true.
it.
It's all true. I mean, listen, when we first connected, I mean, this is the beauty of social media, I think. You know, when we first connected, I don't know how many years ago that was, I looked at your profile and I thought, like, wow, all these things are so in line. How have I not heard of this guy? Like, you know, and it was like instantly kind of kindred spirits.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I feel the same. I think, I spend a lot of time these days talking about how like shitty social media can be, but
Yeah,
friendships like ours, and I guess finding like a tribe, albeit online, of people who have aligned interests and open to conversations. That's one of the really real benefits of social media. So
absolutely.
I'm glad we connected, man. Like I was talking about it, to some of the homies at the gym today. I was like, I'm
Cool.
talking to my boy Chris. We met
Yeah.
online, and when we've established a proper friendship, it's been cool.
Yeah, it really has. And I mean, you know, you're all the way in New Zealand. I'm in Canada. It's like the other side of the earth, but we can still keep this connection, which is very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the expense of being a little bit like corny and cheesy, I like put on my like all blacks shirt. uh,
I wish
like,
I don't know what's your national sports team. I feel bad. I should have
I
put like one of
mean,
those Mounties hats on or something.
no, please don't. You'd have to wear a hockey jersey or a
A
lacrosse
hockey
shirt.
jersey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but that wouldn't be you.
No,
So,
no. Well, to be fair, I don't. I've never watched the All Blacks play, at least in real life. Yeah,
yeah,
I never got in. I never got into like rugby culture.
yeah.
Like that's our like that's our dominant sort of middle New Zealand sport. But I never appealed to me at high school. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's funny. I mean, that's very much the same with me and like typically Canadian sports. So, you know, I wasn't a sports kid. I was into music and skateboarding. I wasn't a team player, right?
yeah. Nah, me neither. I was
Yeah,
into martial arts and like hardcore.
yeah.
Like yeah.
This episode of the Authentic Adversity podcast is brought to you and sponsored by Another Road Drug and Alcohol Treatment Center. Another Road offers a client-centered recovery program tailored to every individual's circumstances. Their focus is to create a supportive, healing environment rather than a rigid, rule-based institution. Their dedicated commitment upholds the individual values respecting each person's desire for recovery. Another Road understands that every individual requires a unique and focused approach to their recovery. Certain modalities of treatment are introduced along with the tools necessary for each client. Located in a rural setting, their addiction treatment center for all genders provides the perfect setting for a transformative recovery experience and sense of belonging. The private residential treatment facility offers an unparalleled program with counselors that have in-depth knowledge based on varying years of experience in addiction. Another Road utilizes unique, individual-focused plans for recovery that address the complexities of drug addiction, alcoholism, and prescription medication misuse. They have a 65% success rate when clients follow their program. I know many people who have completed this program, and they have absolutely rave reviews. To learn more, visit anotherroad.ca. So anyways, I want to get into, you know, first of all, like I spent a little time out in New Zealand, years ago when I was 17. Um, and something I did notice that was very, very similar to kind of the drinking culture in Canada is that, you know, I saw a lot of heavy drinking, a lot of, you know, evidence of, I would call it like abuse of alcohol. Can you tell me a little bit about what growing up in New Zealand was like for you.
Yeah, no, that is still like a dominant cultural thing. Like if you look at the data, our youth tend to drink a bit less now, but
Hmm.
that's because they spend more time online and take a lot of their
Yeah.
risk taking and experimental behavior like digitally. But yeah, man, I grew up in West Auckland, which is so I live in Auckland, which is the biggest city in the country. Uh, about 1.5 million people here. The capital is Wellington, but West Auckland's kind of like a bit more like working class. Think of like, souped up cars and like AC/DC and,
Yeah.
like the Motley Crue. That was kind of the shit that was cool when I was a kid. And a real heavy drinking culture that we're all exposed to from like quite a young age. And
Hmm.
for me, within our broader cultural dynamics, like my dad's like a chronic alcoholic, like dad's in recovery now, but yeah, he's been off and on the wagon my entire life. And I guess his like abuse of alcohol and all that came with that made me shy away from partaking in that culture from like adolescence.
Right.
Like so
Right.
when I was like 15 years old and my friends were getting into like proper binge drinking, like
Hmm.
40 ounces and we didn't, when we say 40 ounce, we're not talking about beers. We're talking about like Jim Beam and distilled spirits.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and a box of beers, and then other drugs around that as well. And yeah, it never really appealed to me. Like I mucked around and experimented with alcohol and stuff a little, but I really was fortunate to find some older, sort of cooler guys in like martial arts. And like I
Yeah.
did like taekwondo and Muay Thai, and then also I got into like the hardcore scene, and there were older guys who were like straight edge, and
Hmm.
so a lot of the dudes at high school were like, "Don't be a pussy, let's get wasted," you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I had these older guys who had like, tattoos and they'd been to America and shit that was cool for a little kid in New Zealand.
Right.
And
Right.
they were like really, they're kind of mentors in a way. They weren't like, you got to be straight edge. They weren't like Courage Crew type dudes. They were just
Hmm.
like real positive and had this youth crew sort of vibe going on. And yeah, I really leaned into that, and it kind of steered me away from making alcohol a key part of my lifestyle. Because as I've gotten
Yeah.
older, I went on to work in alcohol and drug harm reduction and like took my personal sort of journey into like a professional space. And alcohol is like this huge contributing factor to all number of social problems in our country, just like it is pretty much anywhere in the world.
Everywhere. Yeah. It
Yeah,
really
I
is.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we continue to have that culture.
Yeah.
Um, which is a real shame. It's sad. I
Yeah.
work with a lot of young people and they're wasting their potential with alcohol. And I understand that's symptomatic of other like societal issues and their own, personal journeys, but it does bum me out that no one legislates to like restrict marketing and access and share of the world's most deadly drug.
Yeah, it really is. And yeah, I mean it's a global problem. It's not you know, it's not just in one area. It's everywhere. And yeah, I think it's such a harmful thing and people don't view it as harmful as, other drugs out there, and it should be stigmatized the same way, really.
Imagine if you went to a bar and everyone was like smoking crack or like
Mhm.
shooting heroin, and
Right.
you weren't, and how that would make you feel emotionally, right? Like that would be, I think, for the majority of people, quite challenging.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you look at the data, like don't get me wrong, I'm not saying like you should you should start doing those things, but
No, no, right.
alcohol across the board causes like way more social harm, and
Mhm.
yet we're just like, yeah, hey, bro, you want a drink?
Yeah.
Yeah,
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 totally accepted.
yeah, like the alcohol industry has done such a brilliant job of making alcohol appear like an ordinary commodity, like it's at the
Mhm.
supermarket now. And yet, anyone who does any sort of light reading of health literature or epidemiology will tell you just what it does, right? Think about like
Yeah.
suicides or poor mental health or domestic violence or homicide, like
Mhm.
assault, car accidents. You know how it is, bro. Like you've lived a life, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and we just kind of like, oh yeah, cool. Let's talk about it on Instagram.
Yeah,
Like
right.
here I
Let's
am getting
brag about it.
wasted. YOLO.
Yep.
It's a
Yeah.
real shame. When I was a kid, when I was a teenager and in my early 20s, I like, living in New Zealand, America had this real mystique to it, and
Okay.
we all wanted to go there, and it's what we saw on TV. It was like this culturally dominant thing, and so when I found like hardcore and straight edge, I really felt like the straight edge scene was like this real countercultural movement. Like it was political, like
Oh yeah.
it really stuck out as like, wow, this is the way forward. And I feel sad that it's not like it never gained like a mainstream popularity
Hmm.
in the way that I would have hoped. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I was, in say, like late 80s, early 90s when I was like really into punk and hardcore, I always had this like secret envy of the hardcore or of the straight edge kids. I couldn't figure out like, they're in the scene, they made it look so good. They made like living straight look so good and so cool.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and it really I think it gave a lot of people, a lot of kids that were looking for an outlet but didn't necessarily want to be like poisoning themselves. It gave them a community. And for me, I mean, I was on the other side of that. I was in the drug and alcohol community in that scene as well, but I had straight edge friends and I saw this, straight edge kids at all the shows and I was like I said, I was envious. I was how can they pull this off and make it look so good? And I totally agree with you. Like it is a shame that it didn't catch on and really gain more momentum with the youth.
Yeah, I know, because I look at a lot of like social justice conversations now, and
Hmm.
they're trendy. Like they're
Yeah.
actually cool. Like it's cool to be like talking about social justice to the point that all the world's biggest brands now have at least adopted the imagery of social justice or co-opted the slogans of social justice to put into like their their marketing and their brand presentation. And I'm like, I think to me it kind of speaks that like mainstream sobriety maybe is dangerous. I know that might sound
Yeah.
a little like old school punk, like, but it's like,
Yeah.
imagine if everyone wasn't getting fucked up all the time. Imagine if people were like living to their highest purpose. Maybe if people were like waking up to the fact that with like a mass movement, we could make like huge political cultural shifts for the betterment of everyone. But yeah, that's not the message that's going to sell things and like make money, right?
Hmm.
So I think there's like been a real, I'm not even saying it's like a concerted political movement to ensure that like straight edge or mate or anti substance abuse messages are cool, but I think it would entirely be possible when we look at what we've done with other political movements. Like they have
Hmm.
been mainstreamed. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's something I think about a lot.
It's really interesting. I agree. So growing up around alcoholism, alcohol abuse, that sort of thing, and seeing that in your father, um, I mean, that was obviously something that How was that as a child, seeing your father like that and being a part of that? Like, I think it's an important conversation to have for. I know a lot of people that will be listening to this are, have been children of alcoholics or are new parents like us who may
Mm.
need this conversation. You know what I mean? Like I think that this is an important conversation to have from both perspectives. And maybe you can give me a little insight on growing up as a child in an alcoholic family.
Yeah, I think that's something we really need to do a much better job of talking about, because it wasn't
Hmm.
until my like 30s, I suppose, when I really started unpacking how my childhood
Yeah.
had impacted me and how it had shaped me. Um, but yeah, it was yeah, like my my father still struggles. Like he relapsed a couple years back, and then I got him back and just helped him get sober again, because
Hmm.
my dad's on the level of drinking that he can't just like willpower it. He has to do like a medical detox, like so
Yeah. I can
they have to
relate.
withdraw him. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so he doesn't die. He doesn't go into
Yeah.
like the delirium tremors or whatever. So got him into DT, but like he's that first happened to him when I was 10 years old, right?
Yeah.
And that's, it's pretty traumatic, like seeing your dad be a mess, like we're meant to, like I hold my baby son who's like 4 months old now, and our experiences of infancy are just so different, like,
Yeah.
when I was born, my father was like celebrating getting drunk in the living room, whereas I was like catching my baby as he came
Yeah.
out of his mother, like shit's so like
Yeah.
profoundly different.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like the thing is, this is like I really love my dad. Like I wish we were closer, because we still talk, and he cares about me and he cares about my family. He just doesn't have the skills to know how to be close to people, I think.
Hmm.
And I guess I inherited some of that when I think about my like longest relationship in my 20s and stuff. Like I didn't know how to build like a real close intimacy with someone. Like I made myself quite like, I guess in hindsight, quite avoidant in my attachment style, because I'd been
Yeah.
hurt emotionally so much by, the person the people who were meant to like make me feel safe in childhood, right? And it's
Right.
not my parents' fault. People just do the best they can with what they have, right?
You
And
know that, and that's very true. It's not. I think a lot of people who are our age we realize that for our parents, they're not bad people. They were just, they didn't know what they didn't know, and
dude,
they were
no one
young
was,
parents, most of them,
yeah,
and
yo,
they were just
exactly.
kind of doing the best with what they had. And I was on a podcast this morning, and I said exactly that. Uh, Same with like my family. I don't fault them for anything. It's not anyone's
Nah,
fault, but it's just
dude,
how we grow up, right?
it's how we grow up, and like they're all operating inside this broader environment where it's like, let's just drink, like men
Right.
don't talk about their issues, like in hindsight, we would say my grandfather was alcoholic, my great grandfather came back from the First World War traumatized by his experiences,
Hmm.
and this comes down like our family line. And we weren't growing up in an era where men had conversation. No one had conversations like we are now. We didn't talk
Yeah.
about what's masculinity and how are men taught to behave in the world.
Right.
What's mental health like. Like these are all relatively new conversations, and that's exciting for like our kids and the people around us, is that we can pause and consciously like sort of break this transmission of like shitty ways of showing up in the world.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
to go back to what you asked, dad, dad drank real heavily, and there was some violence towards my mother, and he was more emotionally abusive to myself and my mother, and until I was a teenager, and then like as I was becoming a man, we'd be like physical.
Right.
Um, yeah, which is, I guess, in hindsight, stuff that never really goes away. Like I feel like
Hmm.
I've done a good job with therapy and shit like that, working through that. Um, but like it definitely shaped my view of the world to some degree. I'm still quite fight or flight. I'm always like a little bit like hypersensitive to like where's the next threat coming from. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
the way I'm
Hmm.
programmed is to be quick to defend myself emotionally or physically. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
always on edge a little bit. I've had to learn how to like soften, I guess. Uh, and that's true of lots of kids who grow up with, this is the whole thing, like adult children alcoholics, the whole
Hmm.
Alcoa program through like Al-Anon and shit like
Yeah.
that, which I never really gone down the road of, but I did go to Al-Anon briefly as an adult, and it was pretty fascinating sitting in a room full of strangers and just how all of our experience had all these parallels, right?
Yeah, it
And
really
yes,
is. I mean, that's like any meeting of like-minded people, right? That have gone through some sort of trauma in life, that we all speak the same language without having to go into detail, right? It's like we've all been
yeah,
through it.
yeah,
We've all
yeah.
been
You
there, you
can
know.
you can meet someone like, so for me, like how a lot of my I guess development played out in my life was
Hmm.
falling into roles in like romantic relationships, like rescuer, sort of a rescuer role. And
Yeah.
so basically, like in hindsight, I'd be like, "Oh, yo, meet someone who's beautiful," and straight away you're zinging, and like you
Yeah.
rush into something, and you're like, "Oh, this is gonna be fucking awesome," and like, and then it
Right.
becomes chaotic, and then like you're trying to stop them from being crazy, and they're trying to stop you from being crazy, and it's just what you're doing is recreating those narratives and patterns that are programmed into your consciousness because
Yeah.
of what you experienced as a child. And
Yeah.
it took me a long time to figure that out. You know,
Mm-hmm.
why do I keep going out with the same sort of person? And I think if you're not self-aware, you can say, I just always am unlucky and get like crazy people. But actually, we have to stop and pause and be like, common denominator and all this is fucking me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like I'm the linchpin to all of it. I
Yeah.
keep gravitating towards and being attracted towards certain like traits in people, and then you have to stop and pause and figure out why that is and how to mitigate that. And I really
Mm-hmm.
feel like if we had better interventions for young people who grew up in households where parents have mental illness and substance abuse disorders, man, we'd just save so much like heartbreak and heartache across the world, man. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I totally agree. Yeah.
Because having gone into work around alcohol and drug stuff as an adult and being in like the mental health advocacy space and doing work around masculinity, you just see people like stuck in the patterns that they grew up
Mm-hmm.
with and completely not cognizant of that. And it's like, yo, man, like even like 6 weeks of working with someone to help you recognize your communication patterns and your triggers, and it would help. I mean, obviously you need
Yeah,
a lot
for sure.
longer, but yeah.
And I mean, to get into that stuff at an early age, not to have to, like ourselves, like get into it in our late 20s, early 30s, have to start looking at things and unpacking things, right? Getting into it, like educating people early in life. So like, this is normal. We can talk about this stuff. Let's unpack as we go. Let's not fill it all up and then unpack it as a giant ball of
Yeah.
mess, right? Like, let's unpack as we go. And I think those conversations are really important. And I think that you do a great job in educating people and like talking about these things on these like open forums that give people um, kind of the open door for that conversation.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think for men in particular, and that's where I've sort of honed my work towards, is working with like boys and men. I mean, I talk to anyone. Like, I love talking to like mixed audiences, but
Hmm.
boys and men in particular need social permission for honest conversation, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's shifting with our younger generations, but even so, there's still a long way to go because for a long time, and that continues today, if you're like, I'm really struggling, I'm really confused, or
Yeah.
my girlfriend broke up with me, or I got a crush on this person, I'm not really sure what's going on, or I'm really I don't feel like living anymore. You could call your boss and say, I bust my hand in the weekend, I can't come in, and they'd be like, oh, good point. But if you're like, man, my head's a mess, they'd be like, how to
Hmm.
not come to the office. You do know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like,
Absolutely. That's the. I mean, I deal with it at my in my career as well as a firefighter. This like
mm,
idea that we have to suck it up, be a man, and all these cliche sort of sayings that they really don't apply. And
no,
I've
they
had a
don't
real
anymore.
struggle with
Yeah.
that. I mean, it- getting into martial arts at a young age, what did that do for you emotionally? What did that bring you? What was the attraction there? And I mean, can you relate that back to your childhood and maybe something that you were trying to physically unpack? Um,
Yeah, at the time it wasn't conscious. I think my
hmm
best friend at the time was this kid Sam, and he'd
hmm
started doing like some sort of like freestyle martial art taekwondo or something, and I was like,
Okay.
oh, yo, that looks cool. And then to his credit, my dad was in recovery from when I was 10 years old till I was 15 years old when he relapsed again, and he took me to martial arts school, like a local community hall. It was
hmm
like freestyle taekwondo, and I asked my father this, and he said, oh, I just told the guy, like, not doing a very good job as a dad. Can you help out
Ugh,
my boy?
yeah.
And I love my dad for that, like, because martial arts became like the single best thing. It's become like the bedrock of how I live my life, like,
hmm
and yeah, I just really loved it, man. It was like just 3 times a week or whatever at the local like scout hall, wooden floors.
Yeah.
You put your dobok on, which is Korean for the gi,
Okay.
and bow, push ups on your knuckles, like old school shit, like,
Yeah.
sparring, no mouth guards. So you're always getting like bloody mouths and like
Yeah.
bruised hands and like, it was pretty, it wasn't martial arts back in this is the 90s, wasn't
Hmm.
as organized as it is today. But for me,
Right.
I just really fell in love with it. And there were a couple of older guys back then, this dude Oliver and Dominic, who were like really good at like aerial kicks and fancy shit. And like,
Okay.
I really just thought they were so cool.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be like that. And I I would walk like 40 minutes from my house to training by myself as like a teenager,
Wow.
to to go. And like it was dope, like I got to put all my, you know, I was very insecure as a boy,
Yeah.
real
Yeah.
insecure. And I always thought I was real ugly and I had a real low self-image and I was pretty shy around girls and stuff. And it just but with all of that, I was also quite angry, and like
Hmm.
it was this thing where I could put it all, man. Like
Yeah.
I would like listen to fucking, I don't know, Metallica or whatever I was listening to,
Yeah.
Slayer or whatever, and on like a Walkman, like I'm old,
Right.
or a CD player or whatever, and
Yeah.
walk to
Yeah.
training and like fight men or practice
Hmm.
fighting men. And like it was dope. And I did it for 5 years and I got like a black belt. And I started doing Muay Thai
Cool.
when I was 17. So like the last year of last year of Taekwondo, I started doing Muay Thai. There's this older guy at school. He was like cool, and he said, "Bro, that shit's whack. You should come to Muay Thai." And like, I was like, "Really?" And then I went to Muay Thai. I was like, "Oh, this is some real G shit." And there was the
Yeah.
gym I went to. I went to one of the best gyms in the world. There's like Ray Seffor there, who now
Okay.
runs the PFL tournament out in New York in America. And
Hmm.
there's like like this guy Jason Suddy. There's like a whole range of like verifiable like international legends at this one gym called Balmoral Liga. And
Cool.
I was like, yo, it's like it was proper fight gym, like the smell of sweat
Yeah.
and blood and like fucking dudes smashing bags. It was like 1997, and I was like, yo,
Yeah.
this is what I want to do forever. And now, fucking 2022, I just come to talk to you after teaching Muay Thai all morning,
Yeah.
and it's dope.
But not before. You were a world champion at one point.
No, I was never a world champion.
Uh,
I won 5 New Zealand titles. I won a 4-man title, so you have to fight like 2 guys in
Okay.
one night. And I won a South Pacific title in like Australasia,
Okay.
and like
Cool.
basically it's Australia, New Zealand, and then I had a few fights in Thailand. I got to fight at Rajadamnern Stadium, which is one of the
Yeah.
famous stadiums in
Wow.
Thailand. And
Yeah.
but I never made it to like I'm not trying to flex. I never made it to like a real high level, but I gave it a good go. Like I fought some decent dudes who a couple of them knocked me out, but I
Yeah. But
won nearly
those
all of
are
my
noteworthy
yeah.
places to fight, though. Like those are that's serious. That's not.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah. I was real happy to have had those experiences, and then as moved into coaching, I've got to work as a coach with some really top level dudes.
Hmm.
I helped coach this dude Brad Riddell to a world title, and he's now in the UFC, and
Cool.
I've got to watch lots of great dudes come through the New Zealand scene, and now in the international scene, and it feels good to be kind of, I guess like a degree of a pioneer for the local scene and see how it's grown and evolved, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
it's
very
dope.
cool. So as a coach, you're a coach and you're an educator, public speaker, and so I
Mm.
think I would imagine that these things kind of mesh well together. You get to probably
Yeah.
do a lot of educating while you're coaching. What's the
Yeah,
approach you
yeah.
take with young people there?
Yeah, no, those definitely co-inform each other, right? So,
Hmm.
yeah, and increasingly I'm doing like, I guess, mentoring of like in a private, like parents will ring me up and like, oh, hey man, I've read about you or I've seen you on television or whatever. Um, my son's been excluded from school or he's got ADHD or
Okay.
my daughter's not very confident. I'd love it if they come work for you. And it's not for everyone. Like some people come and like, this gym stinks. Like I'm not into
Hmm.
this guy's jokes.
Yeah.
But some other ones really stick with it and it focuses them and it gives them the same healthy outlet that I got. And on top of that, like the practice of martial arts, as you know, like is emotionally positively transformative. Like it
Hmm.
teaches you how to turn up on time. It teaches you how to apply yourself. You know, when you get knocked down, you learn how to pick yourself back up. Like, you learn about emotional control, because if you just lose it, like, you're going to get smashed even more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, I actually did a body of research for UNESCO, and it was like a year-long thing, and I found like martial arts programs all around the world. I'm talking like
Okay.
refugee camps in Egypt and
Wow.
like places in the Bronx and all this sort of shit. I can send it to you if you like. But across
Yeah,
the
I'd love
board,
that.
whatever the martial art, we found that kids move towards achieving like what we consider the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, like just really great positive outcomes for the involvement in martial arts, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like I like to do that in the gym as with individuals, but I also run a few programs for kids who've been experiencing homelessness, or on Wednesday I do some pro bono work with women who've come out of prison or they're going into
Okay.
prison. They're in this sort of like halfway house and community. And
Mm-hmm.
like it's just rad, you know. And one of the things that I've learned is that just giving someone positive affirmation consistently alongside constructive feedback is so good for them. Because if you come from like a dysfunctional background and no one's ever told you that you've done well, that fucks with
Yeah,
your psyche, you know. Like, so
it
many
really does.
people just hungering for what I found is so many people, and you don't have to come from an adverse background to like to get this, are just hungering for some love and attention, right? And for
Mm-hmm.
many, I've found that n- n- any attention is better than no attention. And you can
Right.
think of
Right.
like horrific, you can think about like horrific people on the internet, whether they've got like 1 million followers or three, and they'll just
Yeah.
like say horrific things and try and tell lies about people and cancel people. You become the locus of attention for a minute, and that must feel good. Like,
Right.
psychologically, you get like reward chemicals and all that sort of shit. But there are healthy ways to do that, right? You don't have to
Yeah.
commit crime or be horrible to people online, or do drugs, or like have like destructive sexual relationships to get any attention. You could go to a
Mm-hmm.
martial arts gym and work hard and have someone say, "Yo, good job, I'm proud of you," and then you
Yeah.
feel proud of yourself, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do that. And then working with young people, and then also young men who turn up to the gym, like regular dudes who want to be fighters,
Right.
come up and I'm like, "What happened to your face, dog?" And like, "Oh man, there was this big party and we punched on, and, you know, this dude who's drunk," just like
Yeah.
I was as a teenager. That informs me about my public work as an educator. So
Okay.
I've been speaking in schools, and it started about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. Off the bat, I started in 2014 doing like organized work around gendered violence prevention.
Okay.
I was invited to be like a board member of an organization here called Rape Prevention Education,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't the catchiest of names. And then
Yeah.
like, and they ran programs in schools about what is consent, and like what's a healthy sexual experience and relationship look like. And then I was doing some stuff with White Ribbon, which White Ribbon started in Canada. And
Yeah.
then the government got in touch, the Ministry of Social Development down here in New Zealand hit me up, and they're like, "Look, we read what you talk about online, and we really like it if you be the face of this campaign around bystander intervention and
Okay.
encouraging boys and men to, you know, look out for people who might be sexually victimized." And that's
Wow.
how it all
Yeah.
began. And now I work in schools and stuff. I just finished a master's thesis on masculinity and shit like that. And so when I hear young men be like, "Yo, man, I got drunk and I fucking smashed this dude and blah blah
Mm-hmm.
blah," I I'm not just like, and this is where I get frustrated, because when I read about a lot of social justice around like healthy masculinity and shit, it's some
Yeah.
fucking absolute person who's like devoid of any sort of like lived experience of what like
Right.
most dudes go through.
Sure.
Like, if you're living in academia, or if you're living in an online bubble of progressiveness, you're so far removed from the very real challenges of what I think majority of males face, right?
Yeah. I'd agree. Yeah.
Most people don't talk in like hyper nuanced academic or activist slogans and jargon, and that
Right.
language isn't particularly appealing to like the guys out there like wanting to get in fist fights and drive his fucking car too fast, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so you need to be able to temper your perhaps really in-depth knowledge of the subject of healthy relationships or masculinity or violence prevention with real world language and experience, so it's
Right.
relatable. And
Yeah.
that's what being in the gym all the time does for me. It lets me reach boys and men where they're at and not expect them to like suddenly like develop this like niche knowledge, you know?
Right, right. Yeah. So did you like what made you want to become an educator? Was it that you were seeing this in the gym and then you kind of transitioned to that, or was it
Nah,
um
man, I just got invited. Like, but people
okay,
message me
yeah.
like, how do you build your I'm fucking 42, right? So like I was born and around before like personal brands were a thing,
Right.
right? Like social media wasn't a thing when I was a kid. Like I was an early adopter of like message boards. I used to be on like the Trustkill
Okay.
message boards and AOL and
Mhm.
MSN and like talking to people in America mainly about like hardcore and music and metal and
Yep.
shit like that. And then I would start talking about politics and shit like that. And I did a radio show in New Zealand for like 15 years and got to interview
Cool.
lots of famous musicians and shit.
Wow, that's
And
awesome.
I've always,
Yeah.
yeah, it was real fun. And
Mhm.
so I've always put ideas out there, right? And kicked things around. And then social media came along, and I continued with that. And then I can't even remember the first time I ever talked in a school. Probably wasn't even that good. And then I just, take a photo, put it on the internet. This is literally how my career started.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Wow.
oh, I talked to this school about this today. And
Yeah.
then someone else messaged me. And then I hated, then I was working this alcohol drug job for the council, like the city council that was
Mhm.
funded by the government. And I kind of was going through a rough patch in 2016. Like my mental health was real shot. I've been in this real toxic relationship,
Okay.
got real depressed, felt like killing myself, quit my
Mhm.
job. And I had a real cool manager. He's like, bro, you could go do this. My friend built me a website. She's like, how much money do people pay you to talk in schools or talk in businesses? I don't just talk at schools. I talk
Yeah,
anywhere. I've talked in
for
prisons.
sure.
I've talked to the military, whatever.
Mhm.
And I go, oh, nothing. I've just been doing it for whatever. And then like, she's like, you're like an idiot. Like, start charging people money.
Oh my
It's
god.
like, it,
This is I've had the exact same conversation because I do a lot of that stuff. I mean, in the addiction world, of course.
mm,
And same thing in the prisons and military, emergency services, schools, all the same stuff as you. And I was doing it for free for so long, and I had that same conversation with somebody. They're like, "Are you crazy, man? Do you know what people pay for this
yo,
sort of thing?
people
Like,
pay stupid money. Like,
it's wild."
it's wild. Like a big corporate will pay you thousands of dollars for what you know. And
And
I used to feel
yeah.
awkward about that. But the fact is like I'd give away my time and my knowledge to people who don't have any money. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I'll go to like a poor, low decile school, or I work with people in the gym who haven't got any money. They want to come to my classes, and I'm like, "Oh, what are you up to?" And they're like, I'm actually in transitional housing." I'm like, "Oh, just come. You're fine. I'm going to be
Yeah.
there anyway." Like. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so I'm like, well, you're corporate, you definitely have mad cash, so pay
Right.
me, son. And then that allows me to help people because I got a family, man.
Yeah.
I got to pay my mortgage. I got children to feed. My partner's not working much right now because she's doing the amazing service of breastfeeding. Like
Right. Yeah.
so you have to put value on your time. You know what I mean?
You really do, and the thing about giving it away for free, I love the fact that it's still there, and like you said, it's available for people who truly can't pay for your time and for your lived experience and knowledge. But it can get if you start doing it for free, it gets
It
very
will,
overwhelming, and you build this
dude.
wild resentment for
Yes,
something
boy.
that you know what I mean?
When,
Eh,
dude, I know this sounds stupid, but if you're paying me what I know I'm worth,
mhm.
I'm extra hype, right? Like
Sure.
I'll go the extra mile. I'm like,
Right.
I'm not just gonna talk to you. I'm gonna entertain you. You're gonna have a good time, and I will do that for free once in a while, right?
Mhm.
But if I do it for free too much, I just run out of gas and I just
Yeah.
have nothing inside me anymore. And it feels like a resentment because I'm talking about, yeah, this is when I fucking saw my dad like fucking having a seizure, or, the girl who got raped, or the person who I know who killed himself because their partner was beating up. Like
Right.
that's telling those stories in order to get an emotional response so I can then layer in academic and professional knowledge underneath that. it's a
Yeah.
real toll, right? It's a toll and it's a skill. And sometimes I want to be able to not do that. And if I am going to do that, like, could you like help me feed my family? That would be real
Yeah.
cool. You know what I mean?
It, and it really is, it's not an easy thing for people to do, even though we love doing it and we know the
Bro,
value, and we do it for not for ourselves. I mean, it gives
it's
back,
a
but we're
service.
doing
Yeah, it
it's
gives
a
back.
service,
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, for me, it got to the point where I couldn't open my phone without like 30 new messages about, like,
Yeah.
and these are real time. They're not like, oh, I think my girl's cheating on me. I think this is happening. It's like I'm ready to die, or I found my partner overdosed and they had to revive him. I need to know what to
Yeah.
do next. And things like that. And of course, these are things that you can't give like a blanket statement to. Everything has to be very personal, and it really, you got to dig deep in yourself to give back. And the same with speaking publicly. I mean, I've gone and spoke to a crowd of people, and when I finished, I I felt more exhausted than I did like cracking pads in Thailand for
Yeah. Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, 2
Yeah.
hours straight. And
It's
and
because
it's just, it's emotional toll on you.
cracking pads, lifting weights, going running, these things are physically exerting, but spiritually and
Hmm.
emotionally rewarding and fueling, right? Whereas
Sure.
talking about the heaviest topics of the human experience, uh, they are spiritually and emotionally rewarding, but they're also spiritually and emotionally draining. And you
Yeah.
do have this deep sense of fatigue afterwards, right? And
Yeah.
I think anyone in the space like you and I are really need to incorporate, like, it's a overused hashtag like everything else, but like self-care, like, and
Sure.
being
Yeah, it's
financially
real.
remunerated to do that. I mean, it is part of that. Yeah. It's not like
Absolutely.
we're savage capitalists. We're just living the real world. And,
Hmm.
you know, I, I can't remember who said this, but like, if you're not well in and of yourself, you're less able to be of service to others. And so making sure the bills are paid allows you to be of better service to other people.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Okay, so anybody listening or watching, I mean, if you don't or haven't seen any of Richie's stuff, you got to go on YouTube. You got to check out his Instagram. You got to listen to these talks. It's very, very, I mean, I'm inspired on a daily basis by you. Um, I watched your TEDx talk on
Oh,
unhealthy
don't recommend that.
masculinity.
That's
Come
the
on,
worst talk I ever gave. It's a
I
bad
loved
talk.
it.
Oh, thank
You
you,
think it's
bro.
bad? I loved it. Um,
It's really bad. It's really bad because I wasn't myself. I was trying to be a TEDx speaker, right? Actually, the night
okay.
before I gave that talk, I had like
Hmm.
200 people in tears because I gave a fucking brilliant talk. And actually, the night before, I wasn't getting paid. I wasn't getting paid for the TEDx talk, but I had a fucking great talk about mental health, right? The
Yeah.
next day, I try and fit into the TEDx format, and it's
Okay.
quite like whack. Yeah, I do appreciate the positive feedback, but I have
Yeah.
I have like an ongoing, continuous cringe about that talk
Do you
because
really?
while the yeah,
Well, for the record, I loved it. I thought you were
thank you,
brilliant,
thank
and I
you.
think you're brilliant with everything you talk about. But on that topic of unhealthy masculinity, I mean, I think you know who I want to talk about.
Oh
Um,
yo,
I mean,
yeah, yeah,
you've put out some stuff that I think is fantastic, and I mean, this like Andrew Tate guy, it's I mean, it's an example of what young people, young men especially, are digesting and thinking is cool and okay and acceptable. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that, and why that's so harmful to us as a culture, and young men especially?
yeah. I can talk about that actually, and I'm even qualified to say so. Like, so let's fucking go.
Yeah.
Um, so I've been fascinated by the concept of masculinity, right? And I think
Hmm.
it's gotten so confusing in the last 10 years, right? Because
Yeah.
we now conflate like sex, our biological material bodies, and gender, which are like the
Right.
sociological constructs and expectations that we attach to our bodies, right? Femininity, the expectation socially of women and girls, masculinity, the expectation socially of boys and men, right?
Mhm.
But there can be boys who are feminine, right? Like,
Absolutely.
if I think about myself when I'm 15 years old and I dye my hair blonde and I'm wearing nail polish and I'm wearing a kilt and I have a nose
Right.
ring and I'm watching like romantic comedies by myself in the room at night crying,
Mhm.
like, stereotypically, culturally speaking, these are like feminine pursuits, interests, and ways of presenting to the world, right?
Mhm.
And none of that is wrong. Like, it doesn't make me any less
No.
of being a quote unquote real man, right?
Sure.
But we get policed out of often. I'm speaking broadly and generally, dear listeners and viewers. Like,
Mhm.
so there are always exceptions to any rule. But if we look at the research in like social sciences around the construct of masculinity, it is this expectation that boys are hard all the time, we're sexually promiscuous, we're dominant over
Mhm.
women, we have a disdain for homosexuals and indeed femininity and softness in general. We have this primacy of work and pursuit of status. We use violence as a problem solving tool. And we are policed into this all the time when we think
Mhm.
about uh, the boy who isn't into sports and how they're last get picked, and the social exclusion that happens to the guy who's gay at school or gentle at school, and he
Right.
doesn't like rough and tumble play. He likes like reading poetry or what. I'm speaking in stereotypes, you know what I mean?
Right.
And you think
Right.
about the kids who get teased and are mean and that people are excluded to them, and then the cool kids, do you know what I mean? The cool boys
Mhm.
who are fitting more into this box of behavior, right?
Yeah.
And we do this all throughout a whole range of like mediums in society. If you think about the messages in music and what they teach us,
Mhm.
and you think about advertising, and you think about the stories in our families, you know, and how we reward the boy who's good at sports and we don't really pay attention to, you know, like I could ask I could ask most rooms of young men, name some famous sports stars, and everyone
Right.
could list off like Kobe Bryant or Israel Adesanya or Mike Tyson or whoever the fuck, right?
Mhm.
Most of us would struggle, myself included, to drop the name of some like Nobel laureates or some mathematicians or some poets,
Sure.
or you know what I mean? I mean, I could say Pablo Neruda, but you know what I mean? Like, so we don't culturally valorize pursuits that aren't physical for boys and men. Does that
Mhm.
make sense? We
Yeah,
socially
I know what you're
police
saying.
boys for crying. We socially police boys for crying and being quote unquote soft. And over a period, right, we are pushing you into this socially rewarded model of masculinity. Now, this is
Right.
not to say that our biology, our sex, plays zero role in our interests and behaviors,
Mhm.
because it does. Like, that's not my academic training. But I've been speaking to like evolutionary psychologists or reading the work of evolutionary biologists, and like testosterone is a real thing. Boys and men
Yeah.
can be more prone to aggression. We can be more prone to physical violence, but how we socialize these things also plays a huge role, right? So
Right.
I might be a naturally aggressive, rambunctious boy, but over time, if I'm taught that this isn't the way to behave and there are punishments for this sort of stuff and it's not socially
Mhm.
acceptable, I'll start doing what the village and the tribe wants for me, right?
Right.
And that and what someone like Andrew Tate does is he reinforces and encourages this limited man box of acceptable behavior, right? And
Yes.
academics and activists call this man box toxic masculinity. I
Mhm.
don't think that's a very, having done this work for many years now, I don't think it's a helpful term. I feel it's a term that's kind of weaponized, and it actually excludes the boys and men that we want to be having these conversations from the chat. It's very
Okay.
like quote unquote woke, and it's kind
Yes.
of counterproductive. I think we need to use the language that works and not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Because Andrew Tate has this enormous popularity, in part, I would say, because he explicitly talks about masculinity and he is aspirational for boys and young men who are looking for guidance, right?
Right.
On the
Yeah.
other end of the online culture war, you have these completely unrelatable voices for most boys and young men, right?
Mhm.
Most boys and young men do not have advanced degrees in gender studies. Most boys
Right.
and young men, if we're speaking systematically and structurally, are like heterosexual and have heteronormative like understandings of the world. Now we need to teach these boys sexuality is diverse. People can be gay, people can be straight, people can be bisexual, people can be straight but want to have like male on male sexual experiences, and all of this is fine, and we shouldn't
Yeah.
disrespect people. And in fact, like, you're going to be a better, healthier person if you know that acceptance of diversity is good. Do you know what I
Sure.
mean? But
Absolutely.
a lot of these siloed online conversations is so unrelatable and so blamey and finger pointing and attacky. And I'm saying this because boys have told me this. They're
Right.
like, in my professional work, that they're like, this doesn't relate. I'm going to go over here to the Andrew Tates of this
Yeah.
world,
Sure.
like, and so unfortunately, inside Andrew Tate's message, which is work hard, like you can avoid depression. I work really hard now. I've got a Bugatti and I'm a world champion kickboxer, which for a lot of guys is an aspirational thing in a capitalist, materialistic society.
Right.
Inside all of that is heaps of misogyny. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I've watched so much of his content and his videos, and a lot of his stuff is explicitly really sexist. Like, he talks about committing violence against women. He is always using degrading language about females. He's calling them like dumb hoes and bitches and talking about grabbing them by the throat.
Yeah.
And just generally, he perpetuates like really sexist, outdated narratives, and a lot of young boys like eat that shit up. And boys will tell me in my work, oh, not all of what he says is good, but like, I like being encouraged to work hard and be more than I am now. And what I feel like adults and educators and activists forget is that our young people are living inside the same culture war that we are all like seeing like flashed across our news feeds all the time. Every
Right.
time there's some new outrageous statement or someone tweeted something wrong or whatever, and
Right.
they're shaped by these algorithms and this digital discourse, right? And if the digital discourse around healthy masculinity is saying like hashtag men are trash and like all this sort of shit, and not all of it is. There are lots of healthy voices around like a broader, gentler kind of masculinity than the extremist activists out there. But
Right. Right.
the algorithm prioritizes outrage. The
Right.
algorithm prioritizes the most like outlandish claims and the most insane videos, right? And so that's what's more prevalent than a video of a dude saying, "Yo, what's up, man? I love my wife. I come home. I
Right.
look after my kids." Yo, that shit's
Yeah.
dope. Because that's healthy masculinity,
It
right?
absolutely is.
Unhealthy
Yeah.
masculinity is saying woman's place is the kitchen, and when the baby's crying, she's got to go fucking pick it up, right? That's an
Right.
unhealthy like idea of like being a man, right?
Yeah.
When you see a video of a guy saying, "Yo, man, my girlfriend broke up with me. I just cried, man. Shit was hard, but I feel better for crying." Healthy
Yeah.
masculinity. See a
Yeah.
video of a guy saying, "Yo, this fucking bitch, she was cheating on me. Fuck that hoe. Like, bros for hoes, money over
Right.
bitches
Right.
for life." Like, that's going to get heaps of likes, and that's unhealthy masculinity. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But
Yeah.
on the other end of it, when you've got voices saying that, like, sex is not a real thing and that there's zero difference between males and females at all, and it's all completely sociologically constructed, majority of people are going to go, that doesn't make any sense. Unless, of
Right.
course, you are in a hyper nuanced activist space and have like an advanced gender studies degree,
Yeah.
which technically I do. Like, but do you know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
when
Sure.
when you're arguing for like things that just don't make any material sense to the majority of people, it's not an attractive argument. So they'll go to where they feel more understood or they feel more seen. And
Right.
unfortunately, a lot of shitty voices do that. Right? I think we need
It's
to find
sad.
this more middle ground. It is real sad because I've been explicitly asked. I live in New Zealand, right? Like fucking bottom of the world. 5.5 million people here. It's a small country. I've been
Right.
explicitly asked to come and talk about Andrew Tate. These like heaps of schools. I've talked to thousands of kids about this
Yeah.
already in a short amount of time, right? Since he hit
Right.
the
Right.
newspapers. And I asked the school the other day, I'm like, "Yo, what up, fam? What do we think of when we think of masculinity?" And the first thing this boy yelled out, "Andrew Tate, the top G." So he has he has a, he has a, he has a,
Yeah.
he has a cultural impact. I had this one kid at a different school make a TikTok video of me,
Mm-hmm.
and it says, "This beta male," that's me, the former
Yeah.
professional Muay Thai fighter, beta
Sure.
male,
Yeah.
is telling lies
Uh,
about the top G. So our boys who
oh
are
my
teenagers,
God.
and I'm just reading Andrew Tate quotes, bro. I'm not making up shit. I'm trying my best to just
Yeah.
run it fucking down the middle. Like,
Right.
this is what the bro said.
Mm-hmm.
He said this about choking a woman, calling her a bitch, all this like horrible stuff. And
Yeah.
you might be like, oh, well, it's just the internet. But unfortunately, all the research would tell you that our behaviors fall out of culturally normative beliefs. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
I wash my hands and put deodorant on and like wear a certain style of clothing because like culturally it rewards me. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I drive a particular car because I'm insecure and I want like the name fucking recognition of the car I drive. You
Yeah.
know, like we
Yeah.
all do this to some degree. Like, you're wearing an All Blacks jumper, which means something. There's value in that for
Right.
some people's readings of the world, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
tattoos, my tattoos, these are like badges for us, right? Like, they're all these codes that we're constantly always like reading and recreating. And unfortunately, a lot of that shit's really unhealthy, and we need to give boys
Yeah.
and men like different aspirational models. And they're out there. Don't get me wrong; they are out there. More and more boys and men are understanding it's cool to talk about your feelings and ask for
Mm-hmm.
help and like speak out against violence against women. But
Right.
I do sometimes wonder that, mm, with the I would argue, as a left-leaning, progressive-minded person, I
Right.
would argue that the current cultural ascendancy of extreme social justice ideas that permeate society, I worry about what the backlash of that is going to be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what's the counter swing going to be? Obviously, this
Right.
all
Right.
happens in America first, and then it like seeps out like fucking toxic sewage throughout the
Yeah.
rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
America gets politically polarized, the rest of the world starts following that model. And
Right.
social media is the conduit for all of this. And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of bumps me out, like I want our young people to have like way healthier cultural understandings about how to relate to each other in their romantic relationships and their sexual experiences,
Mm-hmm.
just as human beings sharing the same planet on the same space and time, like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and not recreating these it goes back to what I was talking about at the start of this conversation, recreating what's always been done. Like, my personal journey of like healing from my childhood and now raising my own children in a completely
Yeah.
different paradigm and a completely different sense of consciousness, and being really mindful about what I role model with them the way my parents weren't, because they didn't know any better. I
Right.
worry that lots of people are sort of like soaking up ideology through osmosis, whether that's alt-right ideology, or I'm talking in extremes, or like
Yeah, for sure.
control left, like, and then nothing really gets better. We're just stuck in this perpetual culture war, and inside like an economic environment which is like increasingly, there's this huge gap between rich and poor. Like, that's been
Right.
happening since like the advent of like neoliberal capitalism, and
Mm-hmm.
it sucks.
It does.
Anyway, I think a lot
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just
Sorry,
great
that was
to
a bit of
me.
a sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but
That's totally fine. I was looking for a rant, to be honest. um, but people like you are starting these conversations and making people, at least like starting the dialogue and making people start to think about it, making people like think outside of that, that box that you're talking about. And I really appreciate that about you. And there are, some great people opening up doors to conversations that need to be had all over the world. And I hope that this is one of those as well. Um, Last question, and I only ask it because I know people are gonna. It's not a deep question. But
no,
every
no,
time I
cool.
talk about you, or like they're like, is his last name really Hardcore?
But it's
It is, right?
it's no, it's my legal middle name actually.
Okay, middle name. Okay.
Yeah, so like when I was like 26 or something, like
Hmm.
hardcore. So I got into the hardcore scene. I used to do a radio show called Viva La Hardcore, and I'd have like,
Oh, cool.
you know, like Hatebreed and all these sorts of bands on my radio show
Yeah.
down here in New Zealand and shit. And then that kind of became a semi-public name. And then I was fighting, right? And then it became my ring name. And I'd walk to the
Cool.
ring list playing hardcore. And then I thought it would be cool when I was like 26 to like get rid of my birth names that my parents gave me and make it my middle name. And it just became how people call me. Yeah. So I've
It's
got a
part of your
legal last
brand. It's
name.
cool though.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Well, it's also my actual fucking name. But you know, like there's like it's on my passport. On my passport, customs officer be like, "Is your middle name Hardcore?" I'm like, "There it is, dog."
Wow.
Like that's my fucking name.
Honestly, I think it's dope.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. I gave my son HC as his middle initials because I thought Hardcore for a little baby was a bit much. But
You know, that's awesome. And you know, I just want to also say, you know, thank you for always being a good friend to me. You've been somebody that I've reached out to, especially like in the like stuff I you know, losing a couple fights and having a hard time and having a bit of a go at myself. And I remember reaching out to you years ago, and you know, you sent me a couple text messages that actually just lifted me out of the funk that I was in. And I don't know if I properly, you know, thanked you for that, but like you've always just been a good friend, like one of those people that, yes, we haven't met in real life, but I feel like I can bring things to you and text you at any time, and you know, you're going to give me the time and, you know, the attention that a brother would. So I appreciate you, man.
Yo, right back at you. Seriously, I'm grateful, and I really hope once airfares get more less expensive because they're mental right now. I'll come over to your neck of the woods and we can hang out in real life. That'd be cool.
What we need to do is meet in Tulum.
Meet and make. Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. Vamos, Mexico. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Cool. All right. Well, lastly, where can people find you?
I got a website, RichieHardcore.com. I'm on Instagram under the name Richie Hardcore. I got a public Facebook page. Those are the best places to find me, man. Or flick me an email if you're interested and you want to talk about anything. It's just hello@RichieHardcore.com. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you,
Real
man.
pleasure to talk to you, man. Real nice to see you.
Honestly, it's always a pleasure to see you. Yeah, it's an absolute honor to share this space with you, and I appreciate it. You're awesome, man. And you know, I hope you have. I believe it's the day before it is here right now. So have a great day.
Saturday. It's Saturday right now. Yeah. Friday over there, right? Yeah.
It's Friday.
Okay,
so you're a day after me. Yeah. Honestly, enjoy your weekend. Say hi to your lovely wife and your two beautiful kids.
Thank you, Chris.
You take care.
Yes,
you take
you
care,
too,
brother.
Okay, brother.
Right.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.